Here we go. Stick with me on this. Well, we've heard not much more than crickets from the office of the Immigration Minister today as it emerged a decision on whether to cancel Novak Djokovic's visa would be further delayed. Apparently, the Stars team of lawyers have more material for the government to consider. Of course they do. But while it felt like there was no real development in the case today, there were so many developments it's hard to keep up. On the issue of whether the world number one tennis player deliberately attended public functions with others in Serbia after he discovered he was COVID positive last month, Djokovic himself has today admitted he did. In a statement via his social media channels, he admitted attending a photo shoot on December 18 out of an obligation to keep the appointment. He denied attending any other events after being told of those December 16 results on the following day. He wrote, "On reflection, this was an error of judgment and I accept that I should have rescheduled this commitment." So, commitment or not, how many people in the world have had to cancel key and crucial commitments, events, in this pandemic? Hundreds of millions? His excuse doesn't wash because he clearly couldn't give a damn how much virus he spreads to others, just as he did in Serbia in 2020 when he ignored social distancing rules, hugged other players, attended parties and played basketball with his team. He couldn't give a damn. Of course, yesterday we discovered that he ticked the wrong box on his Australian immigration entry form. He declared falsely that he hadn't travelled to any other countries prior to his trip to Australia. Today, confirmation that his declaration was false, but he shifted the blame. He stated, "My agent sincerely apologises for the administrative mistake in ticking the incorrect box about my previous travel. This was human error and certainly not deliberate. We're living in challenging times in a global pandemic and sometimes there are mistakes that occur." Doesn't he seem to have an answer for everything? And so articulate about it, almost couching his responses like a lawyer. In fact, have a look at one of his posts in reference to the day he took both a rapid antigen test followed by a PCR test. He states, "Out of an abundance of caution," yes, "out of an abundance of caution, I also took an official and approved PCR test on that same day." An abundance of caution, not bad for someone whose first language is Serbian. Despite being against vaccination, I tell you what, he must have been glued to the world's health officers over the past 2 years, who've all used that same term over and over again. The politicians have borrowed it as well. Out of an abundance of caution, Novak. How incredibly switched on. Come on. This is what being worth 300 million Australian dollars buys you. The world's best portable lawyers, wherever you might be, whatever troubles you might be in. Meanwhile, a German news website, Der Spiegel, has questioned the authenticity of Novak's positive COVID test result from December 16. Their digital data on the Serbian certification comes up as dated December 26. Now, that discrepancy, coupled with the false entry declaration, could be used now by the Immigration Minister to mount a convincing separate case for cancelling his visa, without having to deal with the rules in place for unvaccinated travellers. Although I would imagine if they decide tonight to go ahead and cancel the visa, it'll all be thrown into one bundle, I should say. How would Judge Kelly cope, therefore, with having to rule on the legal facts of entry and how there was an illegality associated with them? But how could one solo entry into this country become so badly monitored, so badly mishandled, but also so mired in administrative contradictions? How can that happen? This week, Judge Kelly put to the warring parties in court, what more could this man have done? Well, my response to the judge would have been, Mr. Djokovic could have prevented this entire embarrassing mess by having done one more thing, Your Honour. Just get jabbed. Can't believe it. Joining me now is lawyer, business owner and commentator Carolyn De Russo and the Labor member for Bankstown in Sydney's West, Tanya Mihaluk. Ladies, welcome.
Hi, Chris.
Let's not muck around. Carolyn, it's also alleged a German news outlet noted inconsistencies regarding his test results and when he may have actually tested positive. I don't know what you read into his verbiage today, his statements, but it sounded like it was written by a team of barristers. Should he lose his visa tomorrow?
Look, I mean, generally when these sorts of things are very public or are going through the courts, pretty much everything goes past the lawyers. So I would not be surprised if that was the case here, not even in the slightest. And in fact, it's the prudent thing to do. And in fact, that's what, you know, a lot of comms people and a lot of lawyers suggests is done. The thing that I'm most concerned about is if there's been a false declaration. And of course, everyone else in the country coming into Australia or us going overseas, you know, you can't provide a false declaration. I'm sure there are circumstances around if you didn't know that information or have that information that, you know, it hasn't been knowing. But the fact of the matter is that is actually something that is really quite serious. As far as Justice Kelly goes, look, the judge can only deal with the information that is before him in court. So he has to rule on the basis of that. So his comments earlier in the week, I think, were pretty reasonable given the evidence that was before the court. Whether further evidence needs to go before the court or whether there needs to be a further application, or whether the government just uses this information to make a further administrative decision, you know, that there is, again, obviously up to the government. What this whole last week has shown us is the what not to do. If you're entering a country, if you're managing a sporting event, or if you are governments, everyone needs to be on the same page. Everyone needs to talk. There needs to be protocols. There needs to be working groups. I cannot understand how we even got here. It is
no
like
one
Monty
was on the same page. No one.
No one at any time.
Tanya,
the Australian Open, it didn't come out of nowhere. We knew what was happening. Get organised.
telegraphed months beforehand and they still got it wrong. Tanya, the federal government can't win either way. Now, the Telegraph is reporting tonight that a source has told that paper that they are moving towards cancelling his visa. They do that, they upset the international community. They don't do that, they upset the domestic community, their voters.
Yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think that this is, and Caroline's quite right, there's going to be a lot of lessons learnt from the past week. But I tell you, everybody's just had enough of the whole saga. This has gone on for way too long. It is completely embarrassing as well. You know, make a decision and be done with it. You know, this is just a complete distraction from the task at hand. At the moment, Morrison should be, or his time would be better served actually sourcing rapid antigen tests. You know, in New South Wales now, you can be fined $1,000 if you don't report a positive test. Well, I went out to 5 different pharmacies today in Bankstown in southwest Sydney and I couldn't find any rapid antigen tests. That's right, they were out of stock. So how are people supposed to report their results if they can't find the tests? So
which means the 50,000 or the 55,000 that uploaded their positive test today could easily translate to 150,000 when they finally get a rapid antigen test.